What is up, ladies and gentlemen? And I made a theory video not too long ago on the Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2 remasters. And my first theory was, what if these games were already remastered but not announced? Well, they have been announced, and it is 100% legit that this is happening and are coming out this year, December 10th of 2024. Now, okay, so we've dropped that. I knew this was coming because of the fact that, it was the announcement for the graphic novel known as Soul Reaver, The Dead Shall Rise. And honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, it was a dead giveaway. I really think it was a pure dead giveaway that we were getting some type of Legacy of Kain game series. Not all of it, maybe some of it, in a remastered format. It happened. My theory happened. And I'm not always 100% correct on this, which is unusual because I'm not usually always 100% correct. And so I really think bringing back Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2, and why not bring, like Blood of Man, Legacy of Kain, or Defiance or Blood of Man 2, But I'm kind of glad that we're getting something at least. And there is one thing I will say is that I've watched the reveal trailer for Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2 remaster more than 3 times, I would say. And I'm going to say one thing about this as well. It looks awesome. Raziel looks amazing. Kain looks amazing. It's everything of what that trailer was able to show us of what the game could potentially be like. And I know by looking at screenshots as well, oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, it looks so good. But here's one thing I will say as well. I went on different types of forums. I believe it was on Facebook recently, or not Reddit. No, Facebook. That's right. And so people are complaining that it looks cartoonish, and quite honestly with you, ladies and gentlemen, I really think it doesn't really look that cartoonish to me, in my personal opinion, because I'm a very visual person. And so I think when it comes to, comparing the remasters for Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2 specifically to that of, the core element of characterization, the color palette from Soul Reaver 1 or even Soul Reaver 2 back in the day before we get these remasters, from a side-by-side comparison, I'm going to tell you right now, I really think that the remasters look so much better. But again, I think looking at the Soul Reaver 2 comparison to that of, the remastered version for Soul Reaver 2, they still look great. They really, really do. Now, one thing I will say when it comes to remasters, especially for these two games in this series, I really think that a lot of people are complaining for the wrong reasons. And like I said, again, I do agree that maybe these remasters do look a little cartoonish. But if you think of it this way, when we got the Dreamcast port for Soul Reaver 1, and then we eventually got Soul Reaver 2 for PS2, these games in a way were still type of cartoony in a little way, or a unique way as well. And I really think that, I know I'll probably get some flack from this, but I don't care. I just really think that, remastering these games are going to be excellent. I can't wait for this. I really can't wait, because there's another thing I really want to get really into detail, just a little bit here, as it were. Blood of Man Legacy of Kain was my very first game of the franchise. When I first played that game, I was astounded. It had a strong impact on me, because that is what drew me in to be a gamer. Blood of Man Legacy of Kain drew me in as a gamer. I know I said that twice, so my apologies. I love this series. I love the fact of the characters. It's a narrative themes. It's the story. It's Kain. It's Raziel. It's what these games were able to provide with a really good strong of narration and deep storytelling in the mix with cutscenes. Kain and Raziel in the Sanctuary of the Clans in Soul Reaver 1. And then in Soul Reaver 2, Kain is in the chronoplast of the introduction of the game. It looks amazing. It's so amazing of how far gaming has come. I really think that when it comes to Soul Reaver 1 and then going from Soul Reaver 2 on PS2, it was a huge mechanical leap or technical leap when it comes to what the Dreamcast was able to utilize for the Soul Reaver 1, other than the PS1 version of the game, and then Soul Reaver 2 only for PS2. It's amazing how far these games have come when it comes to its graphic fidelity. And that is one thing what I really loved about the whole entire series as a whole. Blood and Man Legacy of Kain was peak, man. It was fire. I fucking loved it. It was so good because it was from the beginning to end. It was what Kain was able to show us in a matter of, doing different types of spells, getting different types of armor from progressing into the story. It was awesome. It was great. And that's what I loved about that game. But what really drove me in the most for Blood and Man Legacy of Kain, though, other than the whole series itself, it was the fact that Kain was an ultimate badass. Okay? It showed off his gruesome and his fatality and very visceral in combat. And then when we got Blood and Man 2, Legacy of Kain, and then Defiance Man, those games really showed off Kain's potential. And when it came to Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2, that showed off the potential of who Raziel really was. Not just as a wraith or a shadow and flame. It was the fact that he was able to utilize the Soul Reaver from hence it came, as it was before it was a spectral being of itself. It was in a form of a blade known as the Blood Reaver. And it was awesome. That's what I love about this series. This series knew what it was doing when it comes to its narration. It was everything. This game is like one of the best franchise games I have ever played. Amongst from Uncharted, or like Assassin's Creed, the earlier games. It's so good. And one thing I will say, we do not get games like this anymore. Why? Is because the developers that make these type of games, like Silicon Knights with Blood and Man Legacy of Kain, or Eternal Darkness Entity's Requiem on the Nintendo GameCube, we don't get those games anymore. Why? Is because the developers that we have today don't want to make these types of games anymore because they have no driven or passion. And it's insulting. Think about like Mass Effect. Those games were peak and fire at the same time because Mass Effect 1 brought a new age in gaming to a certain degree because you get to play a different type of builds. You could do whatever you want. But again, going back to Legacy of Kain, other than Soul Reaver 1 or Soul Reaver 2, or even the remasters that are coming out this year, I don't care. But again, this is why we are getting these, is because these games were utterly important of their time, and they still are. That is why I can't wait to replay Soul Reaver 1 and Soul Reaver 2 again. And yes, I do have these games pre-ordered. And I've always said, pre-orders are not always the best, but for this series, it's worth it because you're revisiting nostalgia.
The future has always been written.